Stevie. We really appreciate you guys for helping put this event together with all the backside of it. I also want to give a very, very, very big thank you to Chelsea. To HOPA for helping to sponsor this event. So many people helped make this event happen, and I'm so grateful for every single one of you. And yeah, I hope we have a really great panel. I'm excited to hear all the responses. So let's get started.
All right, so I am going to sit here in this chair. We are so excited to have you all here with us today. And originally, I was going to introduce each of you. However, you all have a lot of accomplishments, each of you for me to list. So I figured the easiest thing would be by you introducing yourselves. Maybe sharing where you went to law school, what your current role, your career is now, your position, where you are, maybe your connection with the Hispanic National Bar and why you were here.
Can you all hear me at this distance? Is okay? Okay. I'm a little bit of a low talker. I'll try and overcome. Carlos Boyar. I am the president of the Hispanic National Bar Association. I may have been the one who come the farthest for this. I come from the great state of New Jersey. I've never been to the state of Mississippi, so it's an absolute pleasure and frankly an honor to be here. So thank you to Lasso. It's Lasso, right? For everything, putting this together. I am a shareholder, a member of the board of directors of my law firm, Archer and Reiner. We are a regional firm in the state of New Jersey and Philadelphia and New York, Delaware. I practice environmental law, environmental litigation specifically. I've been doing that for over 20 years.
Hello, everyone. I'm Victor Flakeus. I am a graduate of this law school, December of 1995, and I am a solo practitioner attorney in Tucson.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Ojeda. I am an assistant United States attorney in the Northern District of Georgia. I live in Atlanta, which is not everything in the Northern District, but most of it. And it's a great place. And I'm from Tennessee. I went to law school at the University of Texas, so the other UT. And I graduated in 2014.
Hi, everyone. My name is Selena Corsadas. I'm a very recent graduate of Ole Miss. Graduated in May, so that's great. I'm currently a federal investigator with the United States Department of Labor with the Employee Benefits Security Administration. I'm based out of Cincinnati, Ohio for our Midwest office. And my involvement with HOPA is I'm part of their new, I think it's like the recent graduate, new lawyer.
Young lawyers.
Young lawyers. It's great to meet you.
Thank you all very much. We'll start with a question for each of you. Maybe we'll start with the how we ended. So maybe speak a little bit to the work that you do. You shared your position with us, but what does that position entail and the career path you took to get there?
Yeah, that's great. So my job, essentially what I do is I investigate private employers, banks, corporations, hedge funds, and administrators to make sure that they're not stealing or misappropriating people's 401ks, pension funds, things of that nature. I also do civil enforcement for certain things like PIA, which is the Mental Health Parity Act, to make sure that insurance providers aren't, making people jump through hoops to get the health care they deserve. And the kind of career path that I took to get there was my first year here. I did 2 internships that I went all summer. I did a clerkship at a public defender's office here in Collins, Mississippi. And then I also worked at a personal injury law firm because I thought, why not try that and see what that's all about. And from there, I just kind of tried a couple things out. I did a clerkship at the ACLU. I also worked with the Mississippi Innocence Project here at the law school. And so.
for me. All right, so I'm a federal prosecutor, and so what I do, I'm on the criminal division. And so what that means, I work in the Department of Justice, and one of 90+ offices prosecuting crimes or representing the United States in the civil side. So I'm specifically in the narcotics and dangerous drugs section. So that means that I investigate and prosecute crimes focused on dismantling large drug organizations that are not only in the Northern District, but cross state and international lines, as you can imagine. And the point of that is to disrupt these organizations, because as you can imagine, with drugs, there's always crime. There's always not just crime, but it's violent crime that go hand in hand. And so really minimizing that, and also trying to help victims of drugs, right? The addicts, you've heard all the wrongful death cases, or we call them wrongful death cases, of fentanyl overdoses. And so that's actually something else that it's very difficult to pursue are basically murders that we're trying to prosecute those because somebody might have given somebody a falsely stamped type of narcotic, which results in their death. So fascinating stuff we do, but we also do other types of things. I get to do child exploitation cases, certain pornography cases, as well as felon possession cases, some immigration cases as well. So it's really neat, and it's not just reactionary. You get to be part of that investigation. You have to help build and work with agents, federal agents, to do some fascinating work. How I got there, this is my dream job, by the way. And so I got there, though, it wasn't straight out. So I did like a law school at UT, and then straight after that, I worked for a firm in Atlanta, Kingman Spalding, and I did product liability work, civil work for 6 years. Which is a long time in a big firm. So I did 6 years there. And then I was able to focus my experiences. I really focused hard on trial work when I was at the firm. It wasn't impossible. You could do it. And that was when I was able to parlay into getting my job at the U.S. Attorney's Office. Not on the first time I applied, not on the second time I applied, but the third time I convinced them. And that's how it works. And I think we'll probably talk about that again, but it's really, there's no one path, and really trying as much as you can to get to where you are.
Well, if you accept that the multiverse theory may be true, this is probably the only universe in which I'm in Mississippi. When I graduated in '95, I was dead set to get back home to Miami. And the only reason I didn't was a chance conversation with my father, Israel. He said, son, you went to law school there, and they treated you really good, and you probably owe it to them to take their law. And I said, okay, Papa, I think you're right. I agree with you. And I did. And in that time between graduating and then getting the results of the bar, I took a job with a smaller law firm in Tupelo. And I remember when I mentioned who I was going to be clerking for, I was up on the 5th floor, and George Cochran, may he rest in peace, was smoking a cigarette in his office, which of course it wasn't supposed to be doing, even in the 90s. And he said, he's an engine of destruction. And I knew right away that was exactly where I needed to go. So I practiced in civil rights, employment discrimination, and felony criminal defense. I worked at that firm for 5 years. We broke up the firm, and one of the partners got elected to the Court of Appeals and ultimately served on our Supreme Court. And at that time, I made the decision as a young lawyer with 3 kids that I needed to go out on my own and see if we could avoid starving. And so that's how I got to where I am right now. In this one. In another one, I went to Maine.
All right, well, thank you. I did not appreciate till just now that all 3 of you predominantly do criminal work, right? Yes. So I guess I'm the civil side, right? I'm on the money side. That's, to me, that was always way too much pressure. If you have a bad day at the office, someone goes to jail or doesn't go to jail. That's, to me, if I have a bad day, someone pays a little bit more or less money, so it's a little easier to sleep at night. So what I do, I'm first talking about what I do, and then I'll tell you how I got there, because it's a short story how I got there. I do environmental litigation, and I find that when I talk about what I do, the vast majority of people have no clue what environmental law is in practice. It is, people think I'm standing in a stream holding a trout or something. Basically, roughly, if you have one property owner, they have contamination due to usually industrial operations, it gets into the groundwater and it moves, and it goes to a second property. That person usually gets mad and brings a lawsuit, and I handle those kinds of lawsuits. Most of my cases are multi-district litigation, consolidated cases with multiple states at issue, or class actions, things of that nature. I never set out to do environmental law. I'm not one of those people who was mindful of the dangers to the environment and climate change and things like that. And well, I was mindful, but was one of the things that drove me into the profession. I knew that I wanted to do some kind of litigation, some kind of trial work. And I knew that I wanted to work for the firm where I am now, and that's how I got into the environmental field. I just happened to get into it. And I think many lawyers, in fact, sometimes it depends on who's in the room, most lawyers kind of don't set out to do the area of law that they ultimately do. You usually kind of have an open mind. You want to work, you want to have a good, high-paying job, you want to get those experiences, you want the opportunity to advance in your career, but you're willing to learn about a lot of different practices. And so for me, I thought I wanted to, when I went to law school, I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor. Then I had a little weird phase where I thought I wanted to be tax lawyer. And then I just knew that I wanted to do trial work, right? I wanted to be on my feet in the courtroom, and so that's how I ended up where I am. For me, coming out of law school, I started my work with a smaller law firm doing plaintiff's personal injury work and mass tort work. And then after 2 years, I came to the firm I'm with now, because that's a great opportunity. And I've been there for 22 years.
Thank you. We'll go with another question for all panelists, and Julio, we'll start again with you. The question has to do with your law school experience. So could you share with us what may have been the most challenging thing about your law school experience and how you overcame that challenge?
Yeah, well, I would say that the most challenging part about my law school experience was adjusting to Mississippi. I mean, I'm born and raised in Holland, Michigan, did my undergrad in North Carolina, and I have never lived somewhere that was so. Mississippi is a microcosm of the entire United States, in my opinion. There's so much going on here that so many people don't see because they don't live here or they don't pay attention. So moving to a state like Mississippi was just a huge adjustment culturally, socially, and what I really found that helped me adjust to that was taking the time to, one, appreciate the history of where I had moved to, like who came before me, what it took for me to get here to be at Ole Miss. Two, just really taking the time to actually make myself want to become a part of the community. It's like one thing that I failed to mention earlier was during my second year of law school, I was really struggling with, okay, how do I connect with a school like Ole Miss, something that's like SEC culture, really cool deep South history. So I went and got an externship with the Ole Miss Athletics NCAA office. So I was like, well, this is a football school. Let's do some football. Might as well. And I knew nothing about football. That's probably why I was a good compliance intern, because I didn't even know who the players were. So, so I went ahead and did that, and I just tried to really put myself into the culture of Mississippi as much as I could. Like I said, I worked in a rural public defender's office. I really tried to just understand where I had chosen to move to. And once I really opened myself up to the state, to the university, and to everything around me, it made all of this.
For me, I think one of the biggest challenges of law school was realizing the immensity of it, right? The significance of what you've done. by going. So for me, I went straight through college to law schools. I didn't take off any time. And at that point, for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's the biggest thing you're doing in your life, right? And you get these pressures and everything rides on your grades, or one test in your 4 different classes. It's a go, right? I mean, that's it. And then your whole career is going to ride on that. It's a lot of pressure. And I think, there's a lot of people to help me deal with that challenge, it was one, you really wake up and you treat every semester as your full-time job, right? Like that, it's not, and I know everybody works hard, but if you can put your all into it and you try as hard as you can in those classes, you can't say you didn't try, right? You've got no one to blame. You can't blame yourself, right? You put all of it into it, you work hard. And the second thing is you realize that for me, I realized that there's no, right? There are different paths for everyone. I didn't get clerkship. I tried and I did, but I still have the job that I always wanted. And I got to work with the biggest firm in Atlanta when I got out of school, right? Because I worked hard. And you can see that. And if you work hard, it's going to reflect in your classes, even if your first semester, even if your second semester wasn't great. Make your second semester or your second year amazing, right? You can do it. And I think that it's getting to law school and getting your hands around it and knowing that every path is different, but just make sure that you're proud of yourself and what you've done.
Well, I go back to that multiverse. I have applied to several law schools throughout the country, and to be perfectly honest with you, Ole Miss made me an offer I could refuse. And I remember going to my then wife, and 2 little ones at the time, and I said, well, I think we're going to Oxford. And she said, oh, England? And I said, no, Mississippi. And she took it like a champ. She really did. My personality was such that honestly, I feel at home wherever I am, and I never feel a stranger in any situation. So the culture, maybe the lack of a history as a Hispanic, really didn't influence my decision at all. In the least, that's where financially and in terms of how I saw my life developing, this was the place I needed to be in, and that's why I came here. Once I got here, and I hate that the old pictures that used to be up at the old law school aren't on the walls anymore, because it had a picture of every class from the 1920s to the present. And you could literally walk down that hall. When I was in law school, we used to call it the Rogues Gallery, because there were plenty of rogues on it, understanding Mississippi's history. You could see him. That's what he looked like before he was governor, when he was in law school. Before they became names that we recognize. And you could see the point before this school had its first Black student. And you could go look and look at the names and say, well, when did somebody with a history something like mine come to this school? And I was blown away, because in the 1950s, for some reason, this school had about a dozen students from Puerto Rico. And when you think of it in the context of Mississippi's racial history, I thought there has got to be a story behind this. And the dean has been very gracious in trying to, there's a story there to be told about these, and they were all men, looking at the pictures. How did they end up here? Why were they here? Why were they here? What were their experiences like? I commend the law school for the efforts it's making today. It really is. It's different. Not that the school was antithetical, but this was just not on most people's radar if you were Hispanic in California, New Jersey, New York, or Florida. And that effort is being made. And I'm grateful to have been able to come here and deeply honored to have been given that opportunity.
So my path is, my answer to this is a little different from my very esteemed colleagues. I was not ready for law school. When I came to law school, I was, coming from a rough background. I had I've never met a lawyer in my life, which is kind of a weird choice to make that your choice, right? But I've never, maybe it's mythical, I don't know. I've never you know, when I showed up to law school, my first semester was by far the worst semester I had. So I had a 2.9. My first semester. And I didn't make a law review. It wasn't at the top of my class, obviously. So I struggled, and at the time, I was just trying to kind of get myself through it. I didn't have to give a lot of thought to why that was and what the challenges were. But now looking back on it, and I thought, I came to law school with the mindset of, if I keep my head down and I do my work, and I work hard, I should be very successful, right? 1 + 1 should equal 2, but it didn't. And you know, some people, it's not a level playing field. And get used to it, because it only gets worse from there. It's not a level playing field, because some kids who come to law school way better prepared. Maybe they come from a family where there's a lawyer or two that can talk to them about things. Maybe they've had a better education up until this point. Maybe they just have a better network of people in the law school to turn to. For me, that head down attitude just didn't work. And it wasn't until I started getting involved with making my network of friends and my study groups, mostly through our Latino law student organization, which was called Alianza, still called, that I started to kind of find my niche, feel better in my own skin. What's law journal? Explain to me what that is. I don't even know what that is and why I should apply for it. So, you know, my law school experience was not my favorite part of my legal career. And it wasn't until I started to practice law that I really, you know, kind of got into the swing of things. But, you know, I like to tell people that story about my grades and how I wasn't necessarily at the top of my class, because I feel like there's a lot more people like me than there's people like who are at the top of the class, right? I used to get frustrated. I don't know how it is here, but back in the pre-internet days, people would post job opportunities, and you know, they would show who's being interviewed. It's the same people. It's the same. It's all the law journal people. It's all the people at the top of the grades. The people I hated who always raised their hand. Why not me? Look, it wasn't easy, but I'm here to tell you that you know, I'm doing okay. I'm a shareholder of one of the largest law firms in the state of New Jersey. I'm the first diverse member of the board of directors of a firm of that size in the history of the state of New Jersey. At the moment, paying for college for 3 kids at the same time is pretty horrific. Right? So it works out, but you do need to have that network of your support system who can talk to you about law school, getting a job after law school, all that. It's so critically important to have your community.
And I hate to jump in, but I can't reiterate enough what Ryan was saying, is that to your point, you don't know your lawyers, you don't know what law journal is, why you have, I didn't never understood that until after I wrote a lot more. But you're right, you've got to have your network of support, and I think, you know, other than treating it as your full-time job, your second job is networking, which I learned is just making friends with adults, by the way. You know, that's what it's starting with that network. Some of the, you don't know what connections that you make that might turn into a job opportunity, or not even, or maybe just a volunteer opportunity, or a volunteer opportunity. But that becomes also very important. And I know it sounds like you're asked to do everything, but you can't. You know, you can have your law school, you have your support system, and that's happening.
Now, just to show you how stupid I was, there was, at the end of the first year, if you didn't grade on the law journal, you could write on it. And so there was a week after this exam was done, and we had to do writing. I declined to do that because I wanted to go visit my girlfriend instead. Now, in the long run, I did okay with my career, and I ended up marrying her. Maybe that wasn't so stupid. But
I was stupid. I was asked to write on law journal. But my whole idea was moot court was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in a courtroom, and anything that had anything remotely to do with the courtroom is what I wanted to do. And I was approached by a student who was in law journal and asked, "Hey, Victor, you got the grades? You want to write on law journal?" I said, "Man, I've got 2 kids and my wife is fixing to have a 3rd. I can't do this. I am not doing it. Well, that person's a magistrate judge now in Northern District, Mississippi, so that's how dumb I was. I told future judge, that, you know, I just blew them off on law.
Last time.
And this really segues into the next question, which is what activities did you pursue during law school? And how did they benefit
Who you want to start?
you? I think anyone, I think we touched on networking, maybe being intentional about what activities you do pursue during law school. Julio?
Well, yeah, I can start. I know that, you know, one of the activities that, I mean, we started the Latino chapter my first year here, so that was that. So that was a great experience. Yeah. Yeah. I also was part of Outlaw. I was a part of BALSA, SBA. It's actually, I just say this because I think it's important to remember there's a lot of firsts that you can still do in Mississippi, and to go ahead and have the courage to do them. I was the first Latino SBA senator at this law school in 2018. So you can still do things like that. So, you know, and I also did sports law journals. I did that. For sports.
Back to sports.
Ran with it. And, you know, I also would do HMBA stuff, NALSA stuff, just whatever I could to really meet a community that I felt that I was missing and that I needed to create. So that helped a lot here, especially because, you know, coming to Mississippi, you have the opportunity to kind of start something creative. So that's why I'm so happy this is happening. It's very, very proud of all of you. So.
For me, I think, well, one, yeah, my law school student group was CHILSA, the Chicano Hispanic Law Student Association in Austin. And so I had my law team group that we would all, and we still have our group chat, but I don't know if you guys know Alejandra Avila, she's the new clerk for Justice Sotomayor. She's in my law team group, like I graduated with her, right? And that's just, we're so super cool, right? Just to like have that, and, you know, and we all struggled together, right? It wasn't just like a thing overnight, so just really neat. So I think going back to having a support system is awesome. And having people that you can conspire with. But when it comes to other like actual school activities, I did the Journal from Law. I did that, but one of the things that I thought most beneficial was diversifying the experiences that you have. So you'll have your law school experiences, your classes. A lot of law schools offer clinics, and some law schools will allow externships with nonprofits or things like that, or with I guess you can do an externship at the judiciary or the legislature. Do those because then you get to one cross things off, right? I did an externship with a nonprofit organization and fabulous experience, and I also represented children in a clinic that was a children's rights clinic. And so that was the first time I was actually going for it as a law student. I got to go to trial as a law student, representing the most wonderful victims of the world, which are children. And that was, you know, such cool experiences that guided me to where I was going to go. So yeah, if you can, to the extent you can, diversify your experiences and get those bar classes in, do it.
Primarily moot court. I did not found the LLSA or whatever it would have been called if I had the wherewithal to found it. And it probably would have been no better than dialogue. There really wasn't any nucleus there for their visa to LLSA. But I did moot court. I tried to involve myself in anything that might involve trial work. My study group, really. And it was a pretty diverse group, and it really covered the range of Mississippi. One of the fellows in my study group was a third-generation grandson of a chancellor, son of a big partner at Butler Snow. The other fella was a working-class son of a Marine who fought at Iwo Jima and grew up eating squirrel. You know, for the Miami kid, that was sort of he needed to do some explaining. About this little squirrel. I remember I asked him what a squirrel tastes like, and he said, greasy. And so that's really, was probably one of my biggest helps in acculturation. I remember back in the old law school, in at Ole Miss is now, they used to do breakfast there in the morning. And we're together and I'm eating, I've got grits, right? And I put sugar in my grits. And you would have thought that my study partner from Vicksburg was going to jump across the table and slap me. He goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting sugar in grits. It's a breakfast cereal." He goes, "You don't put sugar in grits, you put salt in grits." So diversify, because every one of your classmates, every one of your classmates has something to teach you. And I could not have been the lawyer that I am or had the career I have had if I had not forged those friendships with those, I'll say, men in my study group as a young law student, because they prepared me to be able to practice law here and taught me the culture in ways I could not have done.
I love following Victor, because now I gotta come up with a squirrel story. Not my experience, but I have two answers here. One, there's what I did, and there's what I should have done, and what advice I give to people, right? So, again, I stupidly was a head down, do my work kind of person. I wasn't that active. I was active in our Latin law students group, Alianza. I was an officer. Didn't quite make it to president, which is ironic now, but and I did a couple of clubs, just a little bit to have something to put on my resume, but I wasn't that active. I didn't do a lot of extracurricular activities during my law school career. Looking back, there are a lot of things you can do that are wonderful. I'm going to just add one thing here to the discussion. Going back to the network and the people, your support system, your networking, your ability to get your job, to have support as you go through your career. There's zero reason why law students should not be members of bar associations. Okay, it's free. Hispanic National Bar Association, local affinity bar association, I'm sure the Mississippi State Bar, I'm sure your local county bar associations, they're all free. Okay, and what we all need in those organizations are people to help us do stuff, right? Run events like this for the bar associations. And so when you start to be active in those kinds of organizations, you get a built-in network. Now, speaking specifically about the Hispanic National Bar Association, we know what it's like to be there, and we know the struggles that y'all go through. And so our mantra day in and day out is, what can we do to help people who are lost? And what can we do to network them with the people that we know? How do we open up our contact list? So anyway, it's free, it's easy. We're desperate for you to help us. And it's not something that's necessarily offered to you through your law school. It's something you've got to kind of go out and really find it. When I was in law school, I was not a member of the Hispanic Bar of New Jersey. I was not a member of the Hispanic National Bar Association. I didn't even know they existed. In my part of the state, the people in the Hispanic Bar Association in New Jersey, I don't know, has anybody ever been in New Jersey here? 1, 2, 3. Anybody from New Jersey? Wow, okay, you're my favorite people. But by the way, I looked up just to see what New Jersey and Mississippi have in common, and I found one thing. Nobody likes us. 2 of the most popular states in the entire country. I think New Jersey is the least popular, and Mississippi is like the 3rd least popular. But anyway, at the end of the day, you all need to build these networks on your own. They're free. There's scholarships and things like that. And I wish I'd done that. But I wouldn't have known it if there wasn't a panel to explain it.
And just going off of that, I would say too, don't be afraid to kind of reach for these national boards, even if you're in a kind of a removed school like Ole Miss. Because the LGBTQ Bar Association, I was also very active with them to some of their lavender law conferences. Met great people through them, And in 2020, I won their student leadership award, which again was like the first time I ever happened for Mississippi. So it's like, just be willing to put yourself out there, put in the effort, and also, just take a chance. Because, just because you're in Mississippi doesn't mean you can't go out there.
We'll turn now to some individual questions, and we'll start with Rebecca. So law students often believe that they will be deciding their whole future based upon that first job out of law school. As you alluded to earlier, you went from one sector to another. How did you end up making that switch?
Sure. So, like everybody doesn't know what they want to do in law school, and I was like, wanted to do immigration law when I first came in. But then I took some classes, I started talking with more people, and then I figured out I want to be in USA. That is what I want to do. I want to prosecute. And so then I had to figure out how, right? And what I was told was it varies by region. But I was told, well, they don't hire people straight out of law school, so we got to figure out what else to do. All right, let's do this. And so for me, it was trying to figure out, what would make me marketable, and to be hired as an assistant U.S. attorney. And so I decided to. I didn't decide. I hoped and prayed and got a job at a firm. And I was able to do that, and I tried to do a practice that was focused on litigation. So I got to get litigation experience. And for those of you, I don't know how many of you know, when it comes to larger firms, a lot of them don't go to trial. If they do go to trial, it's only the partners trying the cases, because as you can imagine, clients don't want to pay an arm and a leg for a second-year associate to do some work. However, you can get, when it comes to product liability tort cases, they go to trial more often, and so that's a better, if they were going to law, they want big law, and they want to do litigation. That's kind of where they end up. If you don't, employment law and product liability tort litigations, where you actually get some courtroom experience. So did that. I did as much as I could and volunteer for every opportunity to be in the courtroom, and that included pro bono work. And that's where I got some of the best courtroom experience, was doing pro bono work. And that's how I was able to get. I think that I'm convinced someone told me that. But I applied a few times to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I didn't get it. You just get this sad letter. And then you're waiting, and this finally comes, or when it doesn't come, and you keep waiting. But you try again, right? You dust yourself off, you keep getting more experiences, practicing more of your responses. And that's how I made the transition. And I knew I wanted to, but it was very different, right? I don't do any product liability anymore. I see medical record and I get so excited because it's very different. So, but it wasn't a big change, but it was one that I had, that I knew I wanted to do. And so I tried to orient my other experiences to that. And I will say, I loved my life at the firm. It was maybe not the life part. I liked my work at the firm. I liked the people I worked with. They're excellent attorneys, and I love supporting people that they're appreciative of me and my work. And I did have that experience, and I liked it, and I got to go to court, which was cool. But this job is so much cooler, and it was just always a dream for me. So that was why I made the transition and how. I was just trying to focus and honing in on what we needed for the next job.
Thank you. Next, Victor. It can be incredibly daunting to start one's own practice. How did you make the decision to be a solo practitioner? And what are some challenges you had to navigate along the way?
I thought about this often, and I think I've told the story before to some friends, because they wondered, why would you have left the firm that you were in? I had been at this firm for 5 years, loved it. Loved my partners, loved the work, was engaged. And there is one of Rembrandt's #1 people, his right-hand man, left. And it wasn't Rembrandt, the sculptor, Rodin. It was Rodin's right-hand man. and left. Dude went off on his own, had a fantastic career working with Rodan, had esteem in his own right. And they asked him, why would you leave that fantastic situation? You were set. And he said, nothing can grow under the shade of a great tree. And I love my firm and I love my partner, but both of my partners were 20 years older than I was. They were esteemed in their own rights. One of the partners had been elected to be a judge, so we would go from being a triumvirate to it just being me and the senior partner at the office. And I loved him dearly. He was my friend. He was dear. But when you're partners and you disagree on stuff, you disagree on stuff. And you've got to have some difficult conversations. And so I said to myself, I'm the young guy. I'm not going to be in a position where I'm arguing and disagreeing with a partner with 20 years more experience, much less someone who's a friend that I care about. And I made the decision at that point that I needed to go out on my own and I needed to do it myself and I needed to succeed on my own. And I had the good fortune that I had profit sharing during my years at the firm, and that provided the seed money. I took no cases when I left the firm. This is probably the greatest divorce in lawyer history. It was completely lacking in any accolade. I went to my partner and I said, this is every case that I'm the primary on. I am leaving them all here. If you want to check any of them off and associate me on them when I'm gone, I'll do so, but I'm not taking any. And he said, don't go. What do you want? I will give you anything you want to stay. Name your salary, name your price, name your terms. And he was more than willing to do it. But the only term he couldn't give me was me doing it on my own. And I had to go. Have some seed money. Nowadays with technology the way it is, you can do it. I had no secretary for the first 5 years as a solo practitioner. It was like the Rockford Files. And I know all of you are too young to remember the Rockford Files, but you would leave a message like Bill Murray, if you want Bill Murray to work, you would leave a message if I wasn't in the office, and I would call you back. And that's how I would get my cases unless I was at the office waiting for the phone. Don't follow my example. I mean, if I teach you anything today, it may be a negative example. And it may not work for anyone else, but I couldn't have done it any other way.
Next, we'll turn to Julio. So what has life after law school looked like for you? And do you have any general advice for students?
Life after law school has been amazing. But I will say, like, sometimes I'm just sitting at my desk working on a case or working on a memo, and I have this moment where I'm like, holy crap, I did it. Like, it's done. I did it. I'm working. This is fantastic. And I would just tell you all, like, when that does happen, just enjoy it. Just take a moment to be like, like, you did it. This is what it's all for. So I think that's been one of the best things about being, finishing law school. And I'm sorry, what was the second half of the question?
So we've got some bifurcated questions here. So general advice.
General advice. Okay. Yeah, just stay open to any opportunity that you can take. Stay open to any kind of club, any kind of volunteer opportunity, anything that can get you writing, anything that can get you feedback from, professors, attorneys, any kind of professional organization. Just write as much as you can, volunteer as much as you can, and just keep on working towards things that you're interested in, because then you'll actually be passionate towards it, your work product will be good, and you'll try to do.
And for Carlos, so there are some statistics here, and I want to make sure I get this correct. According to the National Association for Law Placement, in 2019, just 2 to 3 years ago, only 2.52% of all U.S. law firm partners identified as Hispanic. How did you go about making partner at Archer, and what was that process?
So first, let me start with a disclaimer, which is when I was in law school and whenever I talk to law students, we tend to think that big law firms, that's the pinnacle of what I can get when I graduate law school. That's the pinnacle of my career. It's going to be the biggest salary. It's the hardest to get into. And let me just disabuse you that the best lawyers that I've met in my career are not big law. The best lawyers I've met are public defenders, prosecutors, with AUSAs, or solo practitioners, boutique lawyers. Just you can be a spectacular lawyer and not be at a law firm. So just be aware. That being said, I was of the mindset I wanted to get paid as much as I could. I wanted to work at a law firm. I wanted to run that law firm one day. So, but those law firms didn't hire me out of law school. I went and got experience for a couple of years, and then I went to my current firm. And I will say, the path to making partner is obviously difficult, as all things in this profession seem to be. But what's hard about that is it's not necessarily about just doing good legal. You could, once again, it's a team with me, just putting your head down and writing good briefs and getting in court a little bit and doing good legal work. That's not going to get you there. You've got to be like a complete player in all categories, because I hate to say this, but your fate at a law firm depends on the people who run the law. If they like you, they're going to promote you. If they don't like you, they're not going to promote you. And so you've got to network within your firm. You've got to get along with people within your firm. You've got to connect with people. And sometimes when you're a person of color, you come from a diverse background, it's especially hard. If you're a woman, if you're LGBTQ, I mean, there are so many different obstacles to connecting with that old white guy who's in the corner office who is making the decisions in your firm. But you've got to balance that and playing that Game of Thrones within the law firm with also bringing your authentic self to work. You're not going to sacrifice your own personal identity, your background, your culture. You're not going to leave that at the door. You can't. And so it's a thin line to walk. It's not easy. But at the end of the day, you need to be known in the firm. People need to know your name. People need to like you. You've got to do things outside the firm. Your work towards partnership doesn't end at when you're done your work day. You've got to volunteer in the community. You've got to do something that shows that you're invested. Law firms are like leaders, community leaders to be part of. And then there's the dirty secret. Once you do make partner, right? You might make partner, but not be a shareholder. There might be tiered equity levels, right? So it becomes a little bit of a shell game about profitability and money, and just the goalposts are always moving a little bit further and further away. But that's and making shareholder and becoming an investment partner in a law firm, at the end of the day, it's going to be about your colleagues looking at you saying, I want to be in business with that person. I want my money to be vulnerable because it depends on that person's performance. And it's kind of a stiff bar. And it takes a long time. I didn't make partner until I think my 10th year. And I didn't make shareholder until I was 15 years. So it takes a long time to get there.
Share some general advice for students. What advice do each of you have for our upper class students in terms of on the brink of starting their career? And if it's okay, Carlos, we'll start with you. Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to keep this simple. Your career ahead of every single person in this room, you're going to have adversity, and you're not going to know what that's going to look like. Maybe it's personal adversity, maybe it's your health, maybe it's professional adversity where you just don't get along with the person you're working with. Maybe you don't like what you start to do. But whatever it is, it's going to happen. And being hungry out of law school is not enough. Being committed to work hard is not enough. It's a marathon. It's takes a long time to be good and to achieve where you want to be in your career. And you cannot, as you sit where you are, you cannot contemplate the things that you're going to have to worry about 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Just understand that when you get punched in the gut, you got to get back up. You just need to keep on doing what you're doing. You got to surround yourself with your own support system. I can't tell you how many times I left my office in my career saying, I think I got to quit. It's too hard. And I can't tell you how many times where when I called friends of mine in the legal profession, I can't do this, I can't, this is too hard. And it's only because of perseverance, support, mental health, that you're able to get to where you want to be and figure out where you want to be. So just understand that when you're going through it, whatever that it is, that everyone's going through it. And you need help. You can't do it.
I'm going to take the flip side of it and put the onus on you as young professionals and as young lawyers to be as kind and as understanding to your colleagues as you possibly can. Because Carlos is right. Your colleagues are hurting. They've got problems. They're dealing with issues that you may be going through yourself, have gone through, or understand. They're going to need a hand. And you need to be that hand. You need to be prepared to give the benefit of the doubt to your fellow lawyers. You're going to need to make yourself available when that random law student reaches out to you and says, I need help with this. You're going to need to give. And you're going to give till it hurts. Even when you may not have an ounce to give yourself, or better yet, don't believe that. So in dealing with your hurt, always understand that that person on the other side and the way they interact with you may be based on hurt that they feel. And be that better person in every circumstance. That's what I would suggest.
For me, piggybacking a little bit is coming straight out of law school. First 3 hours picking your jobs lined up. It's kind of like a residency because you're paid better than residents. Residents, right? It is. It's first few years you're establishing yourself, trying to figure out if you like what you're doing. So and I think it's all about framing. So that's what I thought of it as. It's like a residency. We get better in like 3 or 4 years. So framing. Having with everybody else, they're trying to get through it, and trying to figure out, am I a good lawyer? I'm spending too much time on this. I got off Instagram, and Chelsea sadly does, I'm still not on it. And I got off Instagram because it was one of everybody, there's this girl that she was at this big firm and they sent her to Paris and she was always posting that she was eating baguettes on the set. Right, I was walking by sewage smells and this is horrible. It's all, everybody, it's all about framing, but I got off Instagram for my mental health. I didn't think of it that way. I was just angry at the time. But it's all about framing, right? Your perspective. And I think mental health is really important when you were thinking about that and kind of going through. So you got it. 3 hands on.
I almost feel like I just need all of the advice they told me. I just graduated, so I would just, echo everything they said. Definitely always make sure to be a kind, compassionate person. Always stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up, ask questions. You don't know what you're doing. Nobody should expect you to know what you're doing after you just graduated law school either. So if you're asking 1,000 questions, that's fine. And just take the time to take care of yourself and to take care of the relationships that you had in law school, the relationships that you have with your family, your friends. Just really just focus on being a good whole person.
Excellent advice. And this brings us to our final question of the panel, one for each of you, and Julio will start with you. So each of you obviously are heavily involved in the community, one way or another. Why is it important for lawyers, especially Latino lawyers, to be involved in the community?
Because our perspective is missing a lot of our country's legal and just administrative law. We need our voices in those spaces. We need our perspective in those spaces. So one of the ways we can do that is by being involved with local communities, being involved with nonprofits, whatever organizations, being involved with writing, whatever you can write to get your voice out there, because chances are your voice is also probably the voice of your community, if not, directly, it's still good to be out there.
From my perspective, I think as lawyers, it's not a job, it's a profession. And I think there's a reason for that. You have, as a member of the profession, the community that you're practicing, you have an obligation, right, to your community. And that's how it always felt, and that gives me pride in choosing the profession that I have. But as a result, that's why you do get involved in the community, you support the community. But more than that, it's I think you're right. I think we're blessing the atmosphere that we're in right now because people are willing to hear you. And if you can open the door to someone else behind you, somebody else will do that for you, right? You've got to go back and pay it forward. And so that's why I love my role. And that's what inspired me to do community service, is to do something.
I remember arriving in Tupelo to start as law clerk in December of '95, and there weren't a whole lot of people who speak Spanish. So in a lot of places where you go, you necessarily are going to be Spanish speaking, Cuba, Puerto Rican, Spanish speaking Mexican, right? Because when I got here, that's all that anybody who spoke Spanish was thought to be Mexican. And, we're not doing a good job of teaching history or geography in our schools. So knowing Nicaragua, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and their histories and everything else, you are by default, in a manner of speaking, a representative of a whole lot of people who aren't represented. You're going to get that call at 2 in the morning. Licenciado, caí en el bote. The Guatemalan fella's telling me he fell in a boat. And I'm like, wait a second, that's not the slang we use. And I said, Mom, what do you mean? El bote. And he goes, no, I'm in jail. And so the word that I use for boat is the word Guatemalans use for jail. And you're going to get that call. And you're going to be looked to in moments when people, because of the nature of the work we do, are in crisis. We're experiencing difficult situations, and you're going to have to extend yourself. Because I doubt any of us here, and this is regardless of what your ethnic or racial background is, didn't get here without a lot of help from some very important people. So, a lot of times I get a call and it's Father Tim, and Father Tim says, Victor, I've got this really wonderful family. And I go, yes, Father, tell me what I need to do. They're always so gracious. I have no expectation of ever getting into heaven, but when I get a call from Father Tim, and he says he's got this family, I just say, whatever you need, Father, pro bono. And just save myself. So if I get in, it's going to be through a flanking maneuver because I do whatever Father Tim tells me.
I hate
Father
bumping.
Tim story.
But I apologize, this might get a little political for a second, but from my perspective, is who else is going to do it? And I'm talking specifically about the Latino population, African American population, any other marginalized group in this country. Apologies to whoever will get offended by this, but look, old straight white men have been in charge of this country and the legal profession for a long time. And it's clear in 2022 that our communities are not being taken care of. We're being left behind. Statistics in every single category diverse populations are being left behind and not being represented at the rate at which we need to be represented. Our rights aren't being advocated for in the way they need to be advocated for. We've seen the political climate shift, and we've seen protections and things that benefit our community get rolled back. And so we need to always be there. We need to be fighting in every facet of our life for your people, for your community, for equality, no matter what your background is. And if you're not giving back, well, then why are we doing this? I mean, we're doing this because we want to see equality. We believe in the Constitution. We believe in making things better for the people who come behind us. And I've seen that. That's why I love this profession, is because it's filled with people who are passionate about those issues, who know that they, because of their education, because of their profession, we need to make a change. And that's what we do.
On that note, let's give a round of applause. Rebecca and Julio, thank you so much for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedules to be with us here in Oxford, Mississippi. We cannot thank you enough. I am sure you all have received more words of wisdom from them today than you can count, both from their own experiences and giving us a charge as we leave here today to make sure that we do make a difference, not only in our communities that we serve, but in this nation at large. At this point in time, I believe the reception is ready to get started. So you all will move from the atrium, or excuse me, from wings into the atrium. And thank you for those joining us on live stream today.
I want to say one more thing, a dirty word. I have the privilege of being the faculty sponsor for Law Center. I want to tell a quick story, tell you what a big deal it is for young people. Say a special thing. Sorry. My name is Cliff Johnson. I'm the faculty sponsor for Law Center. It only started in 2018.
Yeah.
We hosted the Southeast Regional Law Center conference. And for so long in Mississippi, when we talked about matters of race, we talked about white folks and black folks. And we never talked about much else. And I just wanted to say for everyone here, and for you folks who made the effort to be here, this is really important for us, not just at the law school, but in the state of Mississippi, to expand that conversation. We talk about intersectionality, we talk about the rich diversity of the state beyond just black folks and white folks, but in the law school, it's not been discussed or represented. And so the work that so many students have done, from David Redis, who signed the documents earlier in 2018, this has just been an amazing achievement. And today, so I'm really proud of the law school, y'all being here as a sign of something important that's happening. And I just want to say a special thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope it's not the last time. I hope this is a recurring thing. This is going to be a good relationship going forward. Thank you for inviting us.
I was on board. But you have, you so you know.
Oh, yeah, that's right, that's what it was. You have to take it off.
I am old school.
It was way past that time. Yeah, they're still in fourth and second.
Passed away, and mom's there, my brother was with her. And he built in 1984.
Feel free to put the stuff on your
Yes, oh man, I wish I could show you pictures.
Yeah.
Because it was amazing.